I know what you're going to think when you hear this, that I've finally lost it. That maybe grief finally chewed through my brain until I started seeing things that weren't there. Maybe you're right. But before you decide, I need you to listen. Because if even one person believes me, if one person stays out of those woods after dark, then maybe what happened to my family won't happen again. My name is Thomas Avery, and 20 years ago, I lived with my mom and little brother in a tiny town called Hollow Creek, Oregon. It wasn't much more than a post office, a diner, and a few blocks of ranch-style houses stitched into the side of a mountain. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business and where secrets had to hide in the trees. After my parents divorced, Mom said she wanted a fresh start. Dad stayed in Illinois, and she packed up me and my little brother Eli, then 10, and drove us west until the road ran out at the Pacific. She bought an old house at the edge of the forest cheap, she said, because no one wanted to live that close to the hollow woods. Back then, that name didn't mean much to me. I was 14, angry about leaving my friends, and more interested in playing video games than listening to local ghost stories. The first few months were almost peaceful. Mom found work at a dental office. Eli and I spent our afternoons exploring trails behind the house, climbing fallen logs, skipping rocks in the creek, pretending we were adventurers discovering new worlds. Those woods became our playground. If I had known what they really were, I would have burned them to the ground before letting Eli set foot inside. By September, school started, and I learned quickly that Hollow Creek kids were weirdly superstitious. They didn't talk about the woods unless they had to, and when they did, they called it the Hollow. One night, while playing Halo at my friend Ryan's house, he told me why. He leaned close and whispered like the trees could hear us. "Don't go past the old logging trail. That's where people disappear." "Disappear how?" I asked. He shrugged. "There's this old story about someone called the King of the Hollow. You say some rhyme, knock 3 times on a stump, and he comes to play, but you never win his game." It sounded like the usual small-town boogeyman nonsense, like Bloody Mary or the Slender Man. I laughed. "A fairy tale? Really?" Ryan didn't laugh back. "You think I'm kidding? My uncle was on the search team that found a kid out there in '98. They never found his brother." Of course, I made the mistake of telling Eli. He was obsessed with cryptids, Bigfoot, Mothman, any creature that made adults nervous. So when I told him about the King of the Hollow, his eyes lit up like Christmas. He wouldn't stop asking about it. What does he look like? What are the words? What game does he play? I tried brushing him off, but that just made him dig harder. Within a week, he was asking everyone, neighbors, classmates, even our mailman. Most people just told him to drop it. But one girl from school, Sierra, finally gave him what he wanted. She wrote a short poem on the back of a napkin and told him never to say it out loud. "By the lonely stump where the forest sleeps, knock 3 times and make your plea. The king will come, his game to keep. The king will come and play with thee." When I found the napkin on Eli's desk, I crumpled it up and threw it away. He just wrote it again from memory. 2 weeks later, I woke up to cold air brushing my face. The window in our shared room was open, and Eli's bed was empty. I don't remember getting dressed. I just remember running through the back door, into the woods, the dirt biting into my bare feet. It didn't take long to find him. He was in a clearing about half a mile from the house, sitting on an old tree stump. The fog was thick enough to drink, and the air smelled like wet moss and rot. "Eli," I shouted, "what the hell are you doing?" He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the ground, lips moving. "By the lonely stump where the forest sleeps." My stomach twisted. "Eli, stop. Don't say it." But he kept going, voice trembling with excitement. "Knock 3 times and make your plea." He raised his fist and knocked 3 times on the stump. The woods went silent. Every sound, crickets, wind, even the stream nearby, just stopped. Then something behind me answered back. Cuckoo. Soft. Mocking. Human. Eli. I whispered. We're leaving. Now. He looked up at me, confused. Did you hear that? Yes. Run. We took off, crashing through the underbrush, branches clawing at our arms. But no matter which way we turned, the trees looked the same. The clearing reappeared in front of us again and again, like the forest was folding in on itself. And then, he stepped out. He looked like a man, maybe 40, with red hair that shimmered in the dim light like autumn leaves. He wore an old-fashioned vest and trousers embroidered with gold threads that glinted like they were alive. Now? What's the hurry? Boys, he said, voice smooth as honey. You called, didn't you? I came. Eli froze. I tried to pull him behind me, but the man smiled wider, showing 2 white teeth. Such manners. He said, don't worry. I'm only here to play. Play what? I asked, my voice cracking. His smile deepened. Why? The only game worth playing. Hide and seek. Before I could protest, Eli stepped forward. I'll hide. The man clapped once. Splendid. And just like that, Eli vanished. One blink he was there. The next, gone. I screamed his name until my throat tore. But the man only laughed softly. Now it's your turn to seek, he said, sitting on the stump. Find the boy. Find my ring. And say, he's here. Do that, and I'll give him back. What ring? I demanded. But when I looked up again, the king was gone. I searched until I lost my voice, my bearings, and maybe my mind. The sky never changed. Morning stayed frozen in pale gray light. I combed through moss, leaves, hollow logs everywhere for a glint of gold, for any trace of Eli. When my legs finally gave out, I was still whispering to myself, he's here. He's here. He's here. That's how the rescue team found me 2 days later. I woke up in a hospital bed, dehydrated, half delirious. They said I'd been wandering in circles near the creek. No sign of Eli. The police questioned me for hours. I told them the truth that someone took him, a red-haired man in the woods. They wrote psychological trauma in their report. The search lasted a week before they called it off. The funeral had no body. Mom aged 10 years that month. Sometimes she'd sit by the window, staring into the trees like she was waiting for the forest to spit Eli back out. And maybe it did, in its own way. I tried to move on. Therapy helped me relabel what happened, turn it into something manageable. My therapist called it a dissociative episode brought on by trauma. He said maybe Eli fell into the creek and got swept downstream. And my mind invented a fairy tale to protect itself. I wanted to believe him. God. I did. But every night, I dreamed of that clearing, of the king's smile, of the echoing cuckoo that followed me into adulthood. I left Hollow Creek as soon as I turned 18. Moved to Portland. Got a job repairing appliances. Kept to myself. For 15 years. I avoided trees whenever I could. Then, the year I turned 32, Mom died. Neighbors said they hadn't seen her for days. When they finally checked on her, she was slumped over the kitchen table, a cup of cold tea beside her. Heart failure, they said. I flew home to bury her beside Eli's empty grave. That's when everything started again. The night before the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled my phone, killing time, until I stumbled on a photography post-sunlight streaming through evergreens. Mushrooms growing in a perfect circle. The caption read, "Found a fairy ring near Hollow Creek today. So beautiful." A ring. My pulse hammered in my throat. For 15 years, I tried to forget those words, Find the boy. Find my ring. And say he's here. What if the ring wasn't jewelry? What if it was Thesa's circle of mushrooms? What if Eli was still there? By dawn, I'd packed a flashlight, a water bottle, and Mom's old compass. I didn't even leave a note. The forest looked smaller than I remembered, more civilized. The trailhead had a new sign warning hikers not to wander off. But everything else was the same: the damp earth, the hum of insects, the whisper of wind through cedar. I walked until the air grew still. No birds, no rustle, just the pulse of silence pressing in from every direction. And then I saw it. The clearing, the stump. I could have sworn the roots had shifted, curling like fingers around the soil. I swallowed hard and whispered the words I swore I'd never speak again. By the lonely stump where the forest sleeps. Knock 3 times and make your plea. The king will come, his game to keep. The king will come and play with thee. Knock, knock, knock. Nothing. I exhaled. Good, I muttered. Maybe I finally. Then I heard it. Cuckoo. Closer this time. I turned toward the sound and saw a perfect circle of mushrooms, bright white against the moss. Inside it, the earth shimmered faintly, like water under moonlight. I stepped into the ring and whispered, "He's here." The ground shuddered. A seam split through the trunk of the nearest oak, widening into a doorway. The smell of rain and decay poured out, and from that hollow stepped a boy in a faded hoodie, barefoot, eyes wide with confusion. "Eli?" I croaked. He blinked at me. "Tom, you look old." I fell to my knees. "You've been gone for 20 years. He shook his head. "No, I was hiding. You didn't find me." I reached for him, trembling. "It's over now. We're going home." A slow clap echoed behind me. Well, said the king. When I said there was no time limit, I didn't expect you to take it so literally. He looked the same, not a single line older. The forest light painted him in gold and shadow. "Please," I said, "you have him. You've won. Let us go." The king tilted his head, eyes gleaming like wet leaves. "Oh, but that's not fair, is it?" He hid. "You saw it. You found. Now we must switch." "Switch?" I repeated. "Your turn to hide." Before I could move, he snapped his fingers. When I woke up, the air smelled like cedar and dust. I'm surrounded by wood walls. Floor. Ceiling carved from a single living tree. No doors. No windows. Just faint light filtering through cracks in the bark. I can hear something outside. Footsteps. Voices. Sometimes I swear I hear Eli calling my name. Maybe he's out there, grown now, searching for me. Maybe he'll find this note if I can push it through the cracks. If anyone reading this finds a lost young man wandering the woods near Hollow Creek, ask him what the riddle was. Tell him I found the ring. Tell him I kept my promise. And for the love of God, don't play the king's game. 6 months later, hikers found a boy near the Hollow Creek trailhead. Barefoot, clothes decades out of date, but alive. He kept asking where his brother was. When they searched the woods, they found a hollow oak split open by lightning, inside of which were strange carvings: a circle, a crown, and 3 words burned into the wood. Some stories are born from fear, others from guilt. But this one, it's about how easily curiosity becomes cruelty, how the innocent become victims of rules they never made. It's about what happens when people, or the universe itself, decide the game isn't fair and someone has to pay. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think stories like this are just myths or reflections of real injustices hiding behind the ordinary world? Where does responsibility end and punishment begin? Tell me what you think in the comments. Let's talk about violence, about fairness, about the price we pay when we try to make sense of things we were never meant to understand.